Northwood High, once vibrant, now a condemned carcass of broken windows and peeling paint. The wind howled through the gaps, a mournful sigh. Michael Lawson, an honor student and track star, vanished without a trace. Whispers of strange occurrences and a haunting presence persisted. Locals spoke of a darkness within the school's foundations. Michael Lawson's smile lit up rooms. He was a natural leader and a bright spark. He dreamed of becoming an archaeologist, his enthusiasm contagious. One autumn afternoon he vanished, leaving his friends worried. Michael's absence from track practice sparked unease. The search was exhaustive, but no leads emerged. His family clung to hope, but acceptance of his loss grew over time. Northwood High's demolition brought mixed emotions. Some saw it as a chance to heal, others mourned the loss of memories. The town braced for the secrets the demolition might reveal. The demolition crew felt an unsettling presence at Northwood High. Shadows danced at the edges of their vision, tools were misplaced. Whispers and strange occurrences intensified their unease. The demolition began, but unease permeated the air. Workers heard whispers, felt watched, and saw shadows. The name Michael was whispered, freezing them in fear. Young Billy found Michael scrawled on a chalkboard. The crew's fear grew, and Frank tried to maintain order. Even Frank couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. Lunch breaks fell silent. Fear spread among the crew. Workers pleaded to halt the demolition, but Frank refused. The air was thick with menace, and fear took root. Machines fell silent. Operators spoke of cold hands and shadows. Frank tried to rationalize, but the sense of dread was overwhelming. The forces at play were beyond understanding and control. The sun was beginning its descent, casting long, eerie shadows across the demolition site, when the discovery was made. Young Billy, his youthful features now etched with a fear that belied his years, stumbled out of the school building, his eyes wide with terror, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Frank! You gotta see this!" he gasped, his voice hoarse with terror. Frank, his heart sinking in his chest, followed Billy into the school, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom of the dust-filled hallway. They reached a classroom on the second floor, its door creaking open as if inviting them in. The air inside was heavy with the scent of decay and the faint, lingering odor of chalk dust. Billy pointed to a window at the back of the room, its panes caked with years of grime and neglect. Frank, his breath catching in his throat, saw it immediately. Etched into the dust as if written by an unseen finger was a single word: Michael. The letters were crudely formed, almost childlike, yet there was an undeniable eeriness to their appearance. It was as if the name had been written from the inside, as if the very dust itself had been imbued with some unseen force. Frank, his face ashen, felt a chill run down his spine. He had tried to rationalize the events of the day, to attribute them to coincidence, to the power of suggestion. But this was undeniable proof that something was amiss, something beyond his comprehension. The discovery of the name etched in the window pane sent a wave of panic through the remaining demolition crew. Tools were abandoned, hard hats discarded, as the men, their faces pale with terror, scrambled over each other in their haste to escape the cursed building. Even Frank, his usual stoicism shattered, felt a primal urge to flee, to put as much distance as possible between himself and the school that seemed to pulse with an unseen menace. As darkness descended, casting long, eerie shadows across the site, the school seemed to take on an even more sinister aspect. The wind howled through its broken windows, sounding like the mournful cries of lost souls. Shadows danced in the flickering light of the setting sun, taking on grotesque, almost human forms. The demolition of Northwood High was abandoned that night, the site left to the elements and the unseen forces that seemed to hold sway over it. The equipment stood silent, monstrous silhouettes against the fading light, as if frozen in time, their operators long gone. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, the name Michael seemed to glow faintly on the dusty window pane, a ghostly inscription that served as a chilling reminder of the secrets buried within the crumbling walls of Northwood High, secrets that, despite the best efforts of the demolition crew, refused to remain buried. News of the abandoned demolition spread through the town like wildfire. The stories, fueled by fear and speculation, grew more outlandish with each retelling. The school, once a place of learning and laughter, was now spoken of in hushed tones, a place of dread. Michael Lawson's name, once whispered in sorrow, was now uttered with fear. Teenagers dared each other to approach the site, to penetrate the chain-link fence. They huddled together, their bravado a thin veneer over their growing apprehension. Among them was David, a lanky boy of 17. He longed to impress his friends, to prove his courage. He volunteered for the dare to spend one night alone within the walls of the abandoned school. His heart pounded, his palms slick with nervous sweat. Armed with a flashlight, David slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the grounds of Northwood High. The schoolyard, once a hive of activity, was now eerily silent. The only sound the distant barking of a dog and the rustle of leaves skittering across the cracked asphalt. The air hung heavy with a palpable sense of dread, as if the very atmosphere itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. David made his way towards the main entrance, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, illuminating broken windows and scattered debris. He pushed open the heavy doors, their hinges groaning in protest, and stepped inside. The air within was stale and cold, thick with the scent of decay and the faint, lingering odor of chalk dust. He shone his flashlight down the long, darkened hallway, his heart pounding in his chest, his every sense on high alert. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of his own breathing, and the echoing thud of his own footsteps on the wooden floor. He passed classrooms, their desks overturned, their blackboards bearing the ghostly remnants of lessons long forgotten. He shivered, despite himself, and quickened his pace, eager to find the room where Michael Lawson's name had been found, the epicenter of the haunting, the place where the veil between the living and the dead seemed thinnest. He found it on the second floor at the end of a long, dimly lit corridor. The door creaked open as if beckoning him inside, revealing a room frozen in time, its desks arranged in neat rows, its blackboard wiped clean, its windows caked with grime. He stepped inside, his flashlight beam dancing across the dusty surfaces, and then he heard it. A blood-curdling scream echoing through the empty halls, a sound of pure terror that sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through his veins. David spun around, his heart pounding in his chest, his flashlight beam darting wildly in the darkness. He saw nothing, but the scream lingered in the air, a palpable presence, a violation of the silence that sent chills down his spine. He strained to listen, his breath catching in his throat, but the only sound was the pounding of his own heart and the creaking of the old building settling around him. He took a tentative step back towards the door, his hand reaching out for the doorknob when he saw it. The chalkboard at the front of the room, its surface previously blank, was now covered in writing, scrawled in large, uneven letters, as if by a child still learning to form the alphabet. "Help me," it read, the letters stark and white against the dark slate. "They took me." David stared at the message, his blood turning to ice in his veins. A cold sweat broke out on his skin, despite the chill in the air. He had stumbled into something dark, something sinister, something that defied rational explanation. His flashlight slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor with a thud that seemed to reverberate through the empty classroom. He stumbled back, his hand reaching out blindly for support, his mind reeling. He had to get out of there, had to escape the suffocating darkness that seemed to be closing in on him, the unseen presence that filled the room with a palpable sense of dread. He turned and ran, his breath catching in his throat, his footsteps echoing through the empty halls. He didn't dare look back, didn't dare acknowledge the unseen force that seemed to be pursuing him, urging him onward, deeper into the heart of the haunted school. David burst out of the school building and into the night, his lungs burning, his legs screaming for respite. He didn't stop running until he reached the familiar safety of the streetlight outside his house. He collapsed onto the curb, his chest heaving, the echoes of the scream and the chilling message on the chalkboard seared into his memory. He never told anyone what he had seen that night, what he had heard, what he had felt in the depths of Northwood High. The demolition of Northwood High proceeded with a grim determination. The once grand structure, now reduced to rubble, seemed to sigh under the weight of its secrets. The air, thick with dust, carried a palpable sense of unease. Frank, his face etched with apprehension, oversaw the operation. One afternoon a discovery was made. Work ceased immediately, a hush falling over the site. Frank peered into the chasm, eyes widening at what lay beneath. A small wooden box, blackened with age. "Get the sheriff down here, now." The contents of the box sent a collective gasp through the small group gathered around the excavator. Inside lay a collection of objects, each a whisper from a past thought buried forever. A faded photograph of a teenage boy, Michael Lawson. A worn leather-bound notebook filled with sketches and the name Sarah. A tarnished silver locket with the initials ML. The sheriff gathered the objects, recognizing their significance. Whispers and rumors coalesced into a chilling narrative. The truth lay buried, waiting to be unearthed. Michael Lawson's disappearance was now a crime scene. As the sun set, a sense of closure settled over the site. The ghosts of the past, their secrets revealed, receded into the darkness. The demolition of Northwood High was completed in a record time. The workers, driven by a newfound urgency to erase the structure from the landscape, to sever the ties to the unsettling events that had plagued the site. The ground, churned and scarred by heavy machinery, was soon cleared, the debris hauled away, leaving behind a vacant lot, an empty canvas upon which the future could be drawn. But some stains, some memories, refused to fade. The townspeople, though relieved to see the dilapidated building gone, couldn't quite shake off the unease that had settled over them. The discovery of Michael Lawson's belongings had reopened old wounds, rekindled the pain of his loss, and cast a long shadow over their collective memory. The whispers, though fainter now, still lingered on the wind, carried on the breath of a past that refused to be silenced. The questions, like the skeletal trees that stood sentinel at the edge of the vacant lot, remained, their branches reaching towards a sky that held no answers. What had happened to Michael Lawson? Who was Sarah, the name etched in his notebooks, a beacon in the darkness of his final days? And what was the meaning of the chilling message that had appeared on the chalkboard, a plea for help from beyond the grave? The truth, like Michael Lawson himself, remained elusive, lost somewhere in the chasm between memory and speculation, between the known and the unknowable. The demolition of Northwood High had unearthed fragments of a tragic story, but the complete picture, the full weight of the tragedy, remained shrouded in shadow, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved, their echoes whispering through the corridors of time, haunting the present with the specters of the past.